What's up? My name is John O, and today, boys and girls, we're going to be diving back into how we can creatively utilize frequencies to evoke feelings in our listeners, but our focus is going to be on how we can do this with drums. Now, you might have watched part 1 and thought, okay, I get it. If high mids and highs add a feeling of excitement, then to get good dynamics in my song, all I need to do is start low, and as the song progresses, just keep adding high mids and highs, right? Not quite, because if you did that, you'd be ignoring the crucial role of low frequencies in a song. What's really interesting about lows is that besides conveying a feeling of bigness or heaviness, scientists have found that low frequencies actually trigger a physical response in human beings. The theory is that to our prehistoric ancestors, low frequencies were often associated with danger. Think of the sounds of a stampede, an earthquake, a volcano. These sounds actually trigger an adrenaline response in our bodies. Simply put, they send our bodies into overdrive, a hyper alert ready to react state. This is why low frequencies feature so heavily in music, where the goal is to get people up on their feet moving and dancing. Take EDM for example. So now you might be thinking, okay, I just need to have a ton of lows and my song will get everyone pumped. Again, not quite, because remember, lows also convey a feeling of heaviness. Then how do we balance these factors? We're going to be looking at how I tried to do just that in our 30-second pop hit. What's awesome about the drums is that it combines all the different frequencies we've been looking at like no other instrument does. In the drums, you've got lows, low mids, high mids, and highs. Drums also make it easy for me to illustrate that often a great way to use frequencies to achieve dynamics in your song is to narrow your frequency range at the start. That means less highs and lows, and as the song progresses, we gradually open up both ends of the frequency spectrum. Let me show you how. Let's start with the verse. To effectively roll off the highs, I just don't play any hi-hats or cymbals at all. As for the lows, I use an EQ to roll off some of the lows from my kick. If you're a drummer, the application here is so simple. Never underestimate the power of just leaving out elements for certain parts of a song. In this case, your hi-hats or cymbals. It's a simple trick that makes a world of a difference to the dynamics of your song. Also notice that while it mostly feels like the drums are playing a simple straight beat, I sporadically get a little bit busier with my kick pattern. Despite this, it never feels like the kick is overwhelming or heavy because I've rolled off some of the lows. This is important, I'll come back to this later. Next, to achieve the floaty, low dynamic feeling of the pre-chorus, I just leave out the drums but add some snaps so it's not too low dynamic. If you're a drummer, the same lesson we just talked about applies. Just sitting out certain parts will do wonders to the dynamics of a song. As for the snaps, you could apply this live by using a sample pad, or you could create a similar feeling by using flam hits on your tom rims. Chorus. To highlight the impact of the chorus, I use a sample that basically mimics the impact a crash would normally provide. This short burst of high frequencies adds energy and excitement, which is exactly what we want. Let me point out that I didn't do this at the start of the verse or the pre-chorus. As a drummer, this is important to know because you shouldn't just be crashing at the end of every fill-in or crashing to mark the entry into any new section of a song just because, well, that's what drummers do. So for example, looking back at our pre-chorus for a second, we wanted a low dynamic, floaty feeling. So if you were playing this song live and you entered the pre-chorus with a crash, that burst of high frequencies would have created the opposite feeling from what we intended. Back to the chorus, of course we also have much more highs being introduced in the drums simply because the hi-hats kicked in for the first time in this song. You can also notice how much of an impact the highs make in the second half of the chorus when I just added in a simple shaker to create that final layer of lift and excitement. It's not loud, heavy or obtrusive, but it really works. As a drummer, you could recreate this feeling by using a tambourine or simply by doubling the note value in your hi-hats. So for example, you could go from playing 8 notes to 16 notes to increase dynamics. Next, you might have noticed that I spent a whole lot of time on my snares in the chorus, beefing it up with the second heavier snare and heavily layered claps that add to the high mids and highs in the chorus. When I'm mixing live, I do sometimes tweak the EQ of my snare, making it brighter in the chorus to achieve this effect. As a drummer, this degree of layering isn't really necessary live because the listener is being moved by the visuals of the show and also the overall volume of the sound. So simple dynamic changes will work just as well to achieve this effect. For example, you could use rim shots in your chorus versus normal snare hits in your verse. Before we move on, let me point out that I added more high mids and highs in the chorus by layering the snares on the 2s and the 4s. It's different when you add additional snare hits on the other counts. Doing that can add elevation and excitement, just like I did with the additional ghost notes on the snare and the double claps. But if you overdo it, This constant burst of high impacts can actually create a feeling of fatigue, not excitement. So do keep that in mind. We'll talk more about this when we cover rhythms in future videos. Lastly, the kick. I layered the kick with a second kick sample using only the highs. That mimics the sound of the kick beater hitting the kick drum's skin. When I'm mixing live, I usually bring up the highs in my kick in the chorus to highlight that sound of the kick beater hitting the kick drum skin. This helps to glue the kick with the rest of the instrumentation in the mix by using the high frequencies you can hear in the speakers versus just the low frequencies you can feel, which are usually in the subs. I also brought back the lows to make my chorus sound nice and big. I achieved this when mixing live simply by writing the level of my subs. So for example, the subs might be lower in the verse and higher in the chorus. As a drummer, the easiest way for you to achieve all of this live is just by having good control over the dynamics of your kick. A softer kick hit will generate less lows and highs than a good solid kick hit.
Audio sins.
Hey man, I play rock music, man, so you gotta have the drums nice and loud, bashing the cymbals. That's how I create lift and excitement in the chorus, man. No! It doesn't matter what genre of music you play, bashing a drum set never sounds good. I've been to rock concerts, metal concerts, and I've never ever heard a sound guy say, "This drummer really bashes his kit, man. It sounds awesome. I love it." Never. Remember, we covered in this video that the highs of the drums come from the drum transients or attacks. So when you play your drums way too loud and you bash your cymbals, both of these two things add way too much highs to a mix. When I'm doing live sound and a drummer does this, I actually go into each individual channel and reduce the highs so that the drums don't sound too harsh. So problem solved, right? Wrong. Why? Because firstly, I've never seen any other sound engineer do this. So what a sound engineer would usually do is just take the drums and bring them softer in the mix. So now what you've ended up with is lousy sounding drums that are barely audible in the mix. And secondly, even after I've tweaked the EQ of my drums, the drums never sound as good as they did when the drummer was playing with good, solid control. But I play rock music, man. I can't be tapping all gentle on the drums. That looks really lame. I understand. You gotta look really cool. This is showbiz after all. So here's what the pros do. They practice looking like they're bashing their kit really, really hard while actually hitting the kit with good, strong control. That's how you get the best of both worlds. It is showbiz after all, so you gotta learn to act. What's the moral of the story? No matter what genre of music you play, learn to play with good control. Next, use purposeful dynamics. You shouldn't just be going nuts because you got too excited and your hormones got the best of you. You should be playing with purposeful dynamics. And finally, don't overdo it with the cymbals. Generally speaking, it always makes the sound guy's life a nightmare. You've got cymbal bleed into the toms, into the snare, into the kick, and the entire mix just starts sounding really, really harsh. So go forth and sin no more. Finally, do note that in contrast with the verse, I simplified my kick pattern in the chorus to just kicks on the 1s and the 3s. Remember, this is because too much lows makes a song feel heavy. So if you're a worship leader, for example, and you want to achieve a feeling of elevation or lift in a chorus, getting a drummer to play a busier kick pattern can actually create the opposite feeling because of the amount of lows being added to the mix. I'll let you hear the difference for yourself. Contrast this with this. The busier kick pattern creates a much heavier feel, and it also creates a feeling of building or tension rather than a feeling of release, which is typically what you want in a chorus. Quick side note, obviously there are types of music that do feature really busy kick patterns on the drums. For example, metal music usually has a lot of double pedal action. So this is why if you listen to metal music, you'll notice there aren't much lows in the mix. And that's because they don't want the song to get bogged down by all those lows coming from those double pedals. Of course, I can't emphasize what a crucial role rhythms play in all of this, and that's why I'm gonna do a future video series focusing exclusively on rhythms, so stay tuned for that. But I think that's enough for one day. I hope all that has been helpful. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm John O. Don't forget to subscribe for more.